Actress Barbie Shu dies of pneumonia after being infected with influenza while traveling in Japan. A 2.5% GDP growth in the city in 2024. And a report says China will propose restoring the Phase 1 trade deal signed in 2020 during Trump's first term. Hello and welcome to TVB News. I'm Melissa Hekalea. Taiwanese actress Barbie Shu has died of pneumonia at the age of 48. This after initially being infected with influenza while traveling in Japan. Mimo Singhai reports.
The passing of Barbie Shu was announced by her sister Di Cho through an agent on Monday. Di said her family went to Japan for the Lunar New Year holiday, and her sister passed away because of influenza-induced pneumonia. Di added she was grateful to be her sister. After the announcement, many of Barbie Chu's friends expressed their condolences on social media. The actress was born in 1976. In 1994, Barbie and Di formed a band called SOS. During Barbie's acting career, one of her most well-known roles was the lead character in Meteor Garden in 2001, winning her a nomination for the Golden Bell Award for Best Leading Actress in a TV series. In 2008, Chu received the nomination of the Hong Kong Film Award for Best Actress with her acting in Connected. She married a mainland businessman, Wang Xiaofei, in 2010. After her divorce in 2021, Chu entered into another marriage in the following year with South Korean celebrity Koo Jun-yeop. The winter influenza outbreak in Japan started in December last year. At one point, weekly infection topped 310,000, the highest figure since 1999. As of the final week of January, over 50,000 people in Japan were infected with influenza. However, Japanese authorities said the epidemic may have reached its peak. A Hong Kong doctor said influenza can turn deadly.
There are two possibilities associated with the death. It could be due to uncontrolled influenza A infection invading the lung, causing pneumonia, or it could be that the patient developed a secondary bacterial infection, causing the patient to deteriorate quickly and run into sepsis.
With Japan being a travel hotspot for Hong Kong people, what precaution measures should individuals take when visiting the country?
It would be really helpful if they bring along with them nowadays with the rapid antigen test kits. That would really help them to test themselves if they are worried about they have got the infection. And once they take note of it, they could seek local medical advice promptly rather than delaying the treatment.
One advises residents to receive seasonal influenza A vaccines, as that is the most useful way to protect themselves against the epidemic. Mumsnai, TVB News.
Hong Kong's GDP in the fourth quarter of last year saw 2.4% growth year on year. The city recorded a 2.5% growth throughout 2024, the low end of the original target range. This as the government said the economy could still see growth this year, despite noting uncertain external factors. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Hong Kong stepped up efforts to attract investment and push for more mega events in the city throughout the previous year, all in the hope of stimulating local consumption and adding a much-needed boost to the economy. This as Financial Secretary Paul Chan noted in recent days that Hong Kong's economy is on track to see growth. The latest GDP figures of Q4 last year showed an increase of 2.4%, which is 0.5 percentage points higher than that of the previous quarter. But the overall economic growth of the city only reached 2.5% throughout the year, which is 0.7 percentage points lower than 2023, and only reached the low end of target range. The sluggish economy was particularly burdened by weak local consumption, as private consumption dropped by 0.6% year-on-year, while export of goods and services recorded a rise of 4.7% and 4.8% respectively. Authorities said tourist demand resulted in the growth of the latter, citing the increase of visitors to the city stimulating the service sector. Despite concerns about uncertain external factors, the government believes there's still room for economic growth this year. Financial Secretary Paul Chan said given the current geopolitical situation, Hong Kong's poised to become the gateway for mainland companies aiming to expand abroad. He added authorities will take advantage of this historic opportunity to showcase the city's international and professional image. Addressing concerns about U.S. President Donald Trump's initiation of a trade conflict affecting Hong Kong exports, Hong Kong Monetary Authority Chief Executive Eddie Yu emphasized the city has already diversified its exports to new locations over the past few years. The HKMA chief further said various measures implemented by the central government to stimulate the economy will be of great help to the city in its economic rejuvenation. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
U.S. President Donald Trump appeared to suggest Washington could impose trade tariffs on the European Union and the UK. This, as he admitted Americans may feel some pain as a result of the tariffs he's announced against China, Canada, and Mexico. Canada ordered retaliatory tariffs on American goods, and Mexico vowed to do the same. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal reported that China's response will include restoring the Phase 1 trade deal signed in 2020 during Trump's first term. Daniel Rao tells us more.
U.S. President Donald Trump conceded American residents may initially suffer following the implementation of his trade tariffs on economic rivals. However, he stressed the need for protectionist trade policy, claiming the U.S. has been ripped off by other countries.
We may have short-term a little pain, and people understand that, but long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world. We have deficits with almost every country, not every country, but almost. And we're going to change it. It's been unfair. That's why we owe $36 trillion.
Trump said import taxes will definitely happen with the European Union and possibly with the UK as well. He said the situation with the UK can be worked out, adding British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and him are getting along very well. Trump's comments come after he signed an order to impose stiff tariffs on imports from Mexico, Canada and China on Saturday. China said it will challenge Trump's tariffs at the World Trade Organization and take other countermeasures. According to the Wall Street Journal, China's initial proposal to tariffs imposed by Washington will center on restoring the Phase 1 trade deal signed in 2020 during Trump's first term. The Phase 1 trade deal ended a nearly 2-year tariff war at that time. The deal required China to increase purchases of U.S. exports by $200 billion over 2 years, but Beijing failed to meet the targets as the pandemic hit. The Wall Street Journal report added other parts of China's plan will include a pledge to not devalue the yuan, an offer to make more investments in the U.S., and a commitment to reduce exports of fentanyl precursors. The journal said Beijing planned to treat the issue of TikTok largely as a commercial matter. This means it would let investors in Chinese owner ByteDance negotiate a deal with interested bidders in the U.S. Meanwhile, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum accused the U.S. of failing to tackle its fentanyl problem and said it would not be solved by tariffs. Elsewhere, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau encouraged his compatriots to boycott their longtime ally after ordering retaliatory tariffs against $155 billion Canadian dollars worth of U.S. goods. Daniel Rao, TV News.
A major salvage operation of the fuselage of the American Airlines jet that crashed near Washington, D.C. will get underway today. The expert team has called in huge barges to assist with the lifting of the wreckage from the bottom of the Potomac River. Officials say they'll respect the dead during the lifting of the debris, with 55 of the 67 people killed formally identified. Families of the victims gathered to survey the scene and pay their respects. The buses they came in were given a police escort, and officers on motorcycles kept the public at a distance. Some walked along the bank of the river where the passenger aircraft collided with an Army helicopter last Wednesday. The investigation continues with question marks over the altitude of the chopper and staffing levels at air traffic control. Investigators say it is vital to get more information from the wreckage. Still ahead, Israel blows up buildings in a Palestinian refugee camp in the West Bank. More cold weather on the way in Hong Kong. And former lawmaker Chim Pui-chung and his son sentenced to jail for defrauding the stock exchange. Welcome back. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in the U.S. and will discuss phase 2 of the Gaza ceasefire with Donald Trump's Middle East envoy. Netanyahu's visit to Washington and a meeting with Trump tomorrow comes with the peace process at a crucial juncture. David Garrett reports.
Heartwarming images seen over the weekend. 3 former hostages reunited with family. 65-year-old American-Israeli Keith Siegel was one. Yarden Bibas and Ofer Calderon were the others. Video of Calderon and his brother also shown around the world. Nissan Calderon says his French-Israeli 54-year-old sibling is thinner, but still has his unique sense of humour, which he says will be needed in the months ahead.
Ofer is home. After 484 days in hell, we had the privilege to hug him again. We want to say thank you for the French government, President Macron, Anne-Claire Legendre and Paul Solier, of all the help that they gave us. Thank you for the President Trump and his team that they pushed to the deal that brought us Ofer back.
Benjamin Netanyahu is in Washington for talks aimed at starting phase 2 of the Gaza peace process. That should mean a release of all of the remaining 80 hostages and Israel moving towards a more permanent end to hostilities. First on the agenda for the Israeli leader will be a meeting with Donald Trump's newly appointed Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff. Witkoff, seen here in the centre of this group last week in Israel. In this newly released video from the US Embassy, Witkoff welcomes 4 freed female soldiers.
The people of the United States stand with you. The President stands with you. And we have a common goal to bring everybody home.
That will not be easy. Hamas won't release hostages in the second phase without a clear plan to end the war. Talks between Netanyahu and Witkoff come after weekend Israeli strikes on the West Bank. Arab countries were alarmed when Trump said some Palestinians should be rehoused in Egypt and Jordan to clean out the strip. Jordan's King Abdullah will visit the White House next week, and Egypt's foreign minister set out his own plan for Gaza's future.
Badr
Abdelati at a diplomatic event in Cairo says, "We have a clear vision for Gaza without the expulsion of citizens, a credible process that will result in a Palestinian state and prevent cycles of violence." Egypt has offered to host a reconstruction conference. Palestinian patients, including 50 children, have been allowed to enter into Egypt for treatment through the Rafah crossing. Israel opened the border after Hamas released the last living women. These injured and ill kids getting the help they need, visual proof that progress is being made, with more talks to come. David Garrett, TVB News.
The cold weather warning is now in force. Weather authorities said minimum temperatures in the urban areas will be around 12 degrees Celsius on Tuesday. It will be a couple of degrees lower in the new territories. The weather was cloudy during the day. People could be seen wearing thicker clothing than usual. The observatory says a cold air mass associated with an intense northeast monsoon is spreading toward the coast of Guangdong, and temperatures should drop overnight. Mornings will remain cold over the next 2 days before a further decrease in temperatures this weekend. Former lawmaker Chim Poi-chung and his son were sentenced to 34 and 37 months in prison, respectively, for defrauding the stock exchange. The sentence was passed at the district court. 78-year-old Chim and his 55-year-old son Ricky were convicted of conspiracy to defraud the stock exchange and a listed company in 2013, having acquired $42 million illegally. District Judge Lin Kam-hung said the actions of the defendants negatively impacted Hong Kong's reputation of being an international financial center. The new-term Macau government is spearheading the development of the Guangdong-Macau in-depth cooperation zone in Hengqin. While some budding young entrepreneurs from Hong Kong and Macau are confident about the zone's rosy prospects, they expect the government to provide adequate transport facilities to attract more talents. Danny Cho reports.
In the commercial zone around Hengqin port in Zhuhai, the flow of people on the streets is not that heavy. Many construction sites in the area are busy. A local resident, Ms. Shu, told us the speed of development in the district is far beyond their imagination. Founder and CEO of AKL Intelligence Technology, Ken Lai, is from Macau. And he has long been engaged in the research and development of unmanned aerial systems. His company now has 16 employees and recently set up an office at Hengqin Incubation Center. Lai credited Hengqin for its broad growth space in exploring low-altitude airspace economy, which is still in the bud. This could give some tech startups the leeway to develop, he said, adding that regulators are mulling new ways to oversee the industry. Mr. Poon, a former hotel chef in Hong Kong and Macau, came to Hengqin 3 years ago to open a cafe. Poon delivered optimistic tidings, saying he's confident of a roaring trade with the area's rising number of tourists and office workers. He noted his customers have gradually increased. Poon hopes the authorities will speed up the overall planning of Hengqin to lure more investors. During an inspection tour of the region last December, President Xi Jinping pointed out the original inspiration of developing Hengqin was to pursue appropriate economic diversification for Macau, and he called for the maintaining of the strategic focus. Macau's newly elected chief executive, Sam Ho-fai, has visited Guangdong twice since his inauguration. He has appealed for concerted efforts to advance reforms to develop the Guangdong-Macau Intensive Cooperation Zone in Hengqin. However, some Hong Kong firms that have registered in Hengqin without renting real offices find the local transport system inadequate. Mr. Wong, a Hong Kong businessman based in Zhuhai, said workers could be attracted by a 10 to 15% wage increase, but employers may not consider Hengqin for higher labor cost. As most public transport is concentrated near the border, one suggested that the government provide urban rail and bus services in more parts of the zone. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
This year's Hong Kong Marathon will take place on Sunday. Some 74,000 runners will take part in the event, with 20% of them being overseas participants. Both the full and half marathon races will begin on Nathan Road in Tsim Sha Tsui. The 10-kilometer race will start at the Island Eastern Corridor. For the 10-kilometer wheelchair race, the starting point will be at Wan Chai Sports Ground. The finishing point for all events is at Victoria Park. The observatory has forecast that the weather will be relatively cool on Sunday, with a minimum temperature of 13 degrees Celsius. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Pearl Magazine is up shortly with the Year of the Snake Outlook. See you then.